Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of a true education. Martin Luther King Jr. said that. But as a society, have we done enough to further our education? On June 11th, 1963, Kennedy addressed the nation after the University of Alabama blockade. In his speech, he talks about civil rights, freedom, and education, and a whole bunch of other things. Of course, I'm going to give you some history on it. If you've ever been in a history class, you know about Jim Crow laws. After the 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote, they struggled with voting tax and a literacy test and a whole bunch of other things that regular people did not have to. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal, also made the South hit another wind. On June 25th, 1941, Roosevelt signed that all office and government jobs are allowed to Black Americans. But during the time World War II was happening, so they suffered segregation and discrimination in the military. After fighting for the country, they came home to the same thing. It didn't end until 1948 when Truman signed that the civil rights movement in the military, saying that none of this was going to happen anymore. On December of '55, Rosa Parks refused to give her seat up on a bus. She proudly displayed these actions, and she sparked the civil rights movement at the time. She is known as the mother of the modern civil rights movement. After the leaders in Montgomery heard about this, they created MIA, which is the Montgomery Improvement Association, and of course was led by a leader we all like to know today is Martin Luther King Jr. And then in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education was signed into Congress. When the Little Rock Nine decided to go to an Arkansas school in 1954, they were stopped by the National Guard, and of course military had to come in and escort them to go to school. But in 1957, the Civil Rights was signed into law. Where and when? On June 10, 1963, JFK sent the National Guard to the University of Alabama. Of course, having Brown versus the Board of Education signed, it made unconstitutional to have public schools segregated. The governor at the time had no right to stop these two students from going to this college, and they were admitted peacefully the year before. On June 11, 1963 is when Kennedy actually gave his speech. He gave it in the Oval Office in front of his president advisors and of course the camera crew. It was televised on TV, and I'm pretty sure everyone obviously heard about it across the United States. How is the significance to past to present? Past was of course segregation in the South, but difficulties over segregation and discrimination exist in every city and every state of the Union, producing in many cities a rising tide of discontent that threatens the public safety. What he's trying to say here is that it wasn't just in the South, even though we like to think it is. It was everywhere in the country during this time. And I think that's very important, because sometimes you just think it was just the South. The present is the educational factor of the speech. I come from an average education, much like you, but I can work with an average education. It is nothing compared to a private Harvard University, but it's definitely nothing compared to an underfunded high school, which I'm very thankful for. There's also political factors in this speech. In the time of domestic crisis of men good and generosity, we'll be able to unite regardless of party or politics. And I think that's very important today, because it seems like we're always fighting about politics. No matter where you go, you always hear about politics. And acceptance, which of course they struggled back then, and of course we're struggling with now. And I think everyone should just love each other for who they are, no matter what they do.
Alone. And for this reason, nationwide legislation is needed if we are to move this problem from the streets to the courts. I'm also asking Congress to authorize the federal government to participate more fully in lawsuits designed to end segregation in public education. We have succeeded in persuading many districts to desegregate voluntarily. Dozens have admitted Negroes without violence. Today, a Negro is attending a state-supported institution in every one of our 50 states, but the pace is very slow. It's alone, and for this reason...
Okay. In his speech, he has a lot of rhetorical devices that I found, but these three are probably my favorite. An illusion: 100 years of delay has passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet not freed from social and economic oppression, and this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not fully be free until all of its citizens are free. So what it's trying to say here is that obviously he's amplifying the word free, or free as some sort of the word free. He's trying to say here that even though they were freed from slavery 100 years in the past, they are still not freed from of these things and not free to go do the things they please to do. Antithesis. In the last weeks, over 75 cities have seen progress made in desegregating these kind of facilities, but are not unwilling to act alone. This kind of contradicts itself because 75 of these cities are like, yeah, we'll help, you know, but they're not going to do it unless someone sticks up for them first. And such a matter as segregation, you should probably be the first one to step up there and fix this problem. An illusion. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man is threatened. And of course, that's alluding to the Declaration of Independence. Ethos, Pathos, and Logos. Ethos, of course, he was the president of the United States at the time. He was senator before that. His brother was his attorney general. So he had a lot of credibility. Again, he was another one of the civil rights leaders. He is on that list there. His logos is very good because he uses statistics such as completion of high school, completion of college, being able to become a businessman, unemployment, life expectancy, and how much money they make a year. Pathos, he talks about what a white person can do and what a black person at the time could not do. So he really does a very good job during his speech of painting a picture in the Americans' minds of what these people go through on a daily basis and what they struggle with. Why will it endure? Of course, it's a part of our history, and that's obviously why it has endured over. It was spoken by JFK, one of probably our most famous presidents, and it still deals with issues. Even though it's not the same issues, it's some sort of similarities. You can really pick out similarities in his speech that we're still kind of dealing with today. These are my resources, and thank you for listening to my speech.